So good morning, everybody. And of course, a special good morning also to all of our brothers and sisters that practice in the Tibetan tradition. Happy Losar. Losar is, of course, the Tibetan celebration of the New Year. And it follows along with many of the Asian calendars for the Lunar New Year, and I understand we are in the year of the pig. And I have a little reading for you that I found that I thought was a wonderful way to segue into this morning's message. And this is a writing that was a letter that was written by a monk to some friends, and it goes like this. The Tibetan celebration of the New Year, we did not drink champagne to celebrate. Instead, we went to the local spring to perform a ritual of gratitude. We made offerings to the Nagas, the water spirits who activated the water element in this area. We made smoke offerings to the local spirits associated with the natural world around us. Beliefs and behaviors like ours evolved long ago and are often seen as primitive in the West. But they are not only projections of human fears onto the natural world, as some anthropologists and historians suggest, but more so a way of relating to the elements, originated in the direct experiences by our people of the sacred nature of the external and internal elements. We call these elements earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness. The six-element practice is a profound contemplation on interconnectedness, impermanence, and insubstantiality. It is one of the most significant insight practices in the Pali Canon. The Buddha recommended it as a way of not neglecting wisdom. And the Buddha taught this as a technique for developing equanimity and cultivating meditative absorption, or what in Sanskrit is called the jhana states. In the six-element practice, we contemplate in turn earth, water, fire, air, space, and consciousness, from gross to subtle, noting how each element is an ever-changing process rather than a static thing. So this morning I thought we might do something a little bit different than just a straightforward Dharma talk. This morning I wanted to have more of an experience together. So I invite you now to cultivate a meditative state. So if you need to shift your posture, make yourself comfortable, take a grounding, centering breath, I encourage you to close your eyes and turn these words into a felt experience as we explore the reality of our interconnectedness with the world, as we explore our interconnectedness with change and with flow. So let us begin. We start first with earth. First, we call to mind the earth element within ourselves. The earth element is everything solid, everything resistant, everything that gives us form. Notice, first of all, those aspects of the body that you can directly experience. The physical presence of the weight of the body, the feeling of the sitting bones pressing into the cushion or the chair, the hands resting on the lap, perhaps the knees on the floor. Simply notice these experiences of solidness. Besides noticing our immediate sensations, we can enter into an imaginative exploration of the whole body. Even though we can't experience all of these objects directly, in the Mahayana Nikaya Sutra, the Buddha encouraged his students to call to mind the flesh, the sinews, bones and bone marrow, the kidneys, the heart, the liver, the diaphragm, and every other conceivable solid matter in the body. We can think more in terms of visualizing the organs, or simply knowing that they are there and they are composed of solid matter. Having reflected on the earth element within, we now call to mind the earth element externally. Everything that is solid and resistant outside of our perceived selves, starting with the floor, starting with the chair, the cushion that we're sitting on, and then expanding outward to recall the building, the vehicles that brought us here, the roads, mountains, rocks, pebbles, soil, the bodies of other beings around us, trees, flowers, plants, crops growing in the fields. Again, we do not aim to start a train of thought, but simply aim to evoke memories in the form of sensory impressions, letting images, sounds, and tactile sensations come into consciousness and mindfully experiencing them. Now let us reflect that everything solid within the body and everything solid externally is the same earth element. There's really no me earth element or other earth element. It's all the same stuff. We normally think of our form, our body, as being us, as being ourselves. But here we recollect how everything of the earth element that is within us comes from outside and returns to the outside. Even as an embryo, as it absorbed nutrients from the world outside, from our mother's bloodstream, but ultimately from the plants and the animals that she consumed, those foodstuffs were not me either. And from that point on, in our lives, every molecule that has contributed to the earth element in this body similarly has come from the outside. We can visualize the flow of the earth element from fields and soil into the body and know that there's not a single molecule of solid matter within this body that is self-originated. It is all borrowed. And we have to give it back. In fact, we are giving it back every moment of our lives. The earth element within us is returning to the outside world right now. We shed hairs. We shed skin cells. When we go to the bathroom, even our bones, which we may think of as most solid and enduring parts of the body, are involved in a continuous process of dissolving and rebuilding. So you see, even your bones are a process rather than a thing. So the earth element within is borrowed, and it's always returning to the outside world, flowing through us like a river. And as we recollect the earth element flowing in this way, we can reflect, this is not me, not mine. I am not this. There's not even any question of letting go. The earth element never was us. It never was ours. We never were holding on to it, because how can we cling to something that is flowing? The earth element provides the template now for the remaining physical elements, which are all treated in the same way. Recollecting the element within us, recollecting the element outside of us, and reflecting that everything that is quote-unquote us is really just borrowed from the outside world, and constantly returning to it, and finally noting, as we contemplate the element flowing through us, that this is not me, not mine. I am not this. Let us move now to the element of water. So we now call to mind the water element within the body, that which is liquid, starting with those manifestations that we can directly experience. We feel the saliva in the mouth, mucous membranes in the nose, or perhaps tears in the eyes, the pulse of blood, sweat, the feeling of moisture in the out-breath. And then we move to those things that we can only experience more imaginatively. Lymph, fat, synovial fluid in the joints, cerebrospinal fluid, and all the liquid that permeates and surrounds every cell in the body. Even though you cannot experience those directly, you can know that those are there. And then we contemplate the water element outside, calling to mind the oceans and rivers and streams, the waters that permeate the soil, the rain, the clouds, the water inside the plants and the animals that we consume. We see, hear, and feel these things as we recall our experience of them. Then we recognize that all of the water within the body, which we think of as us and ours and ourselves, is in reality simply borrowed. Borrowed for a while from the outside world that is quite literally flowing through us, and that we do not own it. There is only one water element. There is no me water, and there is no other water. So we reflect. This is not me. This is not mine, and I am not this. Let us move to the fire element. The Buddha defined the fire element as that by which one is warmed, ages, and is consumed, and that by which what is eaten gets completely digested. In other words, the fire element within is metabolism. It is our energy. So sitting in meditation, we can experience the heat of the body. Feeling the cooler air we inhale contrast with the warmth of the air as it leaves the body. Feeling the heart pumping, and calling to mind the myriad chemical combustions taking place at the cellular level, sparks of electricity in the muscles, the nerves, and the brain, and knowing that all of this energy is borrowed from the fire element outside of us. The fire element outside is the raw physical energy in the universe itself, from nuclear fusion in the sun to the warmth of a cup of coffee, from the molten core of our planet to the chemical energy stored in food as fat, sugars, and proteins. We feed the body by taking in the sun's energy stored in plants or flesh that we consume. We warm ourselves in the rays of the sun, either directly or through burning fossil fuels that grew in the sunlight of ages past. And we have to keep replenishing the body's fuel because the fire element is forever leaving us, radiating out from our skin, wafting away on exhaled air. And so the fire element, like earth and water, simply flows through us. Unstoppable. We observe and reflect on this, and as we observe the energy within the body, we can be aware that it's actually another river, a river of energy passing through this form, that it's really not ours at all. This is not me. This is not mine, and I am not this. Let us move now to the element of air. As soon as we call to mind the air element within the body, the air in our lungs and other body cavities, even the gases dissolved in our blood, we immediately are aware of breathing, aware that air is flowing rhythmically in and out of the body. So almost simultaneously, we recall the air element outside of us, the air surrounding us, and touching the skin in this very moment, the winds and the clouds and the breezes that we hear and see moving branches and grasses. We're taking in and giving out this element right now. Right now, the air element is entering and leaving the body. Right now, air is entering, oxygen is dissolving in the bloodstream, being taken to cells to provide energy, and carbon dioxide is being exhaled. Where is the boundary between inner air and outer air? There is only one air element, and that's within us, simply borrowed for a few moments. We cannot hold on to the air element any more than we can hold on to the other elements. In fact, we can only live by letting go, never by holding on. To hold on is to die. And so we reflect that the air element, like other physical elements, is not me, not mine, and I am not this. So let us move now to the element of space. Space is a strange and different element because it's just there. We cannot see it. We cannot touch it. We cannot say how far it extends. We can't even say what, if anything, it is made of. So as we sit with our eyes closed in meditation, can we feel any sharp division between me space and not me space? Without the eyes, the quote-unquote optical delusion of there being a delineation between inner and outer, the body loses its senses of having fixed boundaries. The hands no longer have 5 fingers and have become just a mass of interwoven sensations. Tingling, there is warmth, there is pressure. The whole body becomes a fuzzy ball of energy. That passing car that you hear, or the sounds that you hear outside the room or within the room, is the sound inside me, or is it outside of me? The sound waves are happening in the air outside, but all hearing takes place in the brain, which is inside. Here, the assumptions begin to have flaws. Even when I am sitting absolutely still, I am moving. This planet is spinning on its axis. It is revolving around the sun. The whole solar system is swinging around the galactic core, and the galaxy itself is rushing away from every other galaxy at an incomprehensible velocity. So although I think there is a me space, I am never actually in the same space for 2 consecutive moments. Space isn't really divided into me space and not me space, and it flows through us. Space is just borrowed. we cannot own it. And finally, we move now to the sixth element, the most subtle of all of the elements, consciousness. But somehow, in the evolution of the material universe, life has arisen. And in the evolution of life, consciousness has come into being. Perhaps we could say that consciousness is the other elements knowing themselves. The Buddha introduces the element of consciousness in this way. And then there remains only consciousness, bright and pure. We have started to realize at this stage of the meditation that there's nothing we can grasp a hold of. And so our mind now turns its attention to itself, the grasper. In this stage of the practice, we notice and reflect upon the way in which sensations, thoughts, images, emotions, and habitual patterns come into being, persist for a while, and then vanish into emptiness. None of them is permanent, and all are simply passing through us in the same way that the earth, water, fire, air, and space elements are flowing through this physical form. So these elements of consciousness are not intrinsic to us and are not a fixed part of us and are not us. Just as there is nothing we can grasp, there is no one ultimately to do any grasping. When feelings of fear or discomfort arise in the practice, as they sometimes do, we treat them in just this way, experiencing the feelings in a non-attached way, surrounding them with mindfulness and loving kindness, and realizing that they are not ultimately a part of us. Having explained that the contents of consciousness, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, simply arise and pass and cannot be clung to, there remains, then, in the words of the sutra, only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. This is the equanimity that comes from letting go, from ceasing to identify with our experience. It's the equanimity that comes from not getting caught up in our inner dramas, from not reacting to unpleasant feelings with aversion, and by not responding to pleasant feelings with grasping. It is the equanimity of acceptance. So with the question, what are we? What arises is a sense that we are the universe become aware of itself. That we are nothing more than consciousness, living energy. That the mind is inherently pure, luminous, wise, and loving, and that we are beginning to know our intrinsic nature, which is emptiness. What I normally assume to be a relatively fixed and solid physical form is actually a dynamic process. And from this arises a wondrous sense of curiosity, beauty, and openness. The world is more alive. I am less attached to my physical form, and my sense of identification has expanded outward. Everything that has ever passed through my body, the solid matter, the air, the water, energy, is now out there in the form of fields, clouds, trees, plants and soil. In a way, those things are all me. And because this very body is made up of these same things, I am them. I am no longer separate and small, but an intimate part of the vast cycle of the elements. To live is to let go. And in order to live fully, we must learn to let go fully and to embrace the flow that is the universe. To embrace the flow that is us.